This is part of the intro to my book, which will look at health, race, and inequality starting in slavery. It kind of starts at Thomas Jefferson and then just gets worse and worse and worse. Then enslavement ends and it continues, and then it goes to the present to talk about how a sort of toxic stress based on discrimination grinds away at our bodies, as well as unconscious and conscious bias in healthcare. So those twin problems have affected Black people most obviously, but affect really anyone. And my contention is Black people are the canaries in the coal mine as our country gets much more toxic and unequal. So that's the big idea. All right, so this piece is, since I don't like reading, really short. I'm one of those hold up, I want to be alone type of writers, so here it goes. Of all forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhuman. In 1966, in the midst of the tumult of the civil rights movement, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made his much-cited comment on racial discrimination in medical care. He was speaking at a press conference before the second convention of the Medical Community for Human Rights, hoping to focus attention on bias and discrimination against African Americans in the city's federally funded hospitals and threatening direct action if something wasn't done. Significantly, he used the word inhuman and not inhumane, and health and not healthcare. Intended or not, this broader frame speaks to both the toxic social discrimination that bleeds across class lines and grinds away at the bodies of Black and brown people, as well as poisonous racial bias in the healthcare system itself. Dr. King saw these intertwined forms of injustice as a civil rights imperative and a crime against our national humanity. For me, Dr. King's words are deeply and profoundly personal. In 1999, my father, a college-educated retired manager in a division of a federal agency, became critically ill. He was in his early 70s when he was diagnosed with colon cancer and a recurrence of tuberculosis he had contracted during his service in the Korean War. And as the disease worsened, he also began to suffer from mild dementia. I lived in New York City, across the country from my hometown of Denver, Colorado. So though my parents had been divorced for years and years and years, my mother had agreed to manage his care. One day she called me and frantically said into the phone, "You've got to get on a plane and come home right now. Your father needs you. He's in the hospital." She instructed me to dress in professional attire and to bring my business cards from the New York Times, where I was the editor of the health pages. When she picked me up at the airport, dressed in extremely corporate attire, looking like the hospital vice president she used to be, I asked her, "Mom, what are we doing?" Her reply was blunt. "They are treating your father like a nigger. We need to let them see who he really is." When we arrived at the Veterans Hospital, where he had insisted on checking in, I was shocked by what I saw. My father, courtly, sophisticated, and always impeccably dressed, was frighteningly thin, disheveled, wearing a dirty hospital gown, his hair uncombed. Worse, he was shackled to the bed with leather restraints on his legs.
Whoa.
As we walked in, I heard an attendant speaking to him in a disrespectful hiss. I pushed past that guy, leaned down to hug my father, and that was when he whispered to me, "Please get me out of here." Everything changed once we arrived. My mother, flipping into an officious mode that she used only at work, set everyone straight: doctors, nurses, hospital administrators. We showed them my father's college degree, medals from his military service, and photos of him pre-illness. I and my mother let his caregivers know that he had studied biology in college, so explaining things to him in a respectful way would help him understand what was going on and prevent him from being afraid and angry. We made them see him beyond his brown skin and the ravages of his illness. My father didn't deserve any kind of special treatment because of his class and education. Class was the only card my mother and I had to play, so we played it. But like anyone, he should have been treated with the dignity and respect everyone entering the healthcare system is entitled to.